Hello, and welcome to part 2 of AP Style, our formal introduction to learning how journalists write. Today we're going to pick up with names. Now, when mentioning a person for the first time in a news story, you want to use their first and their last name. Think back to when we looked at our attribution lesson from a couple of days ago, from the end of last week, and we talked about that made-up story in which there was a charity event here at Charles Henderson. Again, that was a made-up story, but all of the people mentioned and listed in the story, especially those from whom we had direct quotes, were given their first name and their last name. And then afterwards, we get to the second point. Anytime you mention a person again in the same story, you just need to use that person's last name. You do not have to use their first name, and you also don't have to use any kind of courtesy titles, Mr. or Mrs. or Doctor, or any kind of title such as that. The only time that you would want to use a title is if it is part of a quote, in which case you must put it, because when we have direct quotations, you have to put the person's quote word for word, or if you're trying to differentiate between two people with the same last name in a story. For instance, if you're covering a story and you interview a married couple, say John and Sarah Williamson, then when you have a quote, instead of just saying, insert quote, such and such, Williamson said, well, we might not know which Williamson said that. And so in that case, it would be good to label them Mr. Williamson or Mrs. Williamson said, and so forth and so forth. Now, let's get back to numbers. We talked about dates and we talked about money, but let's talk about numbers as a whole. Numbers 1 through 9, when just discussing numbers, not discussing dates and not discussing money, but just numbers themselves, numbers 1 through 9 are spelled out. However, numbers 10 and above, it doesn't matter how big above, are written as numerals. And I really like this example because it shows how the number system plays out when there's a single-digit number and a double-digit number in the same sentence. The 3 teenagers applied for summer jobs at 12 stores. You see, 3, of course, is a number 1 through 9, and 12 is above 10. And so even though they're both numbers and they're in the same sentence, we must follow that rule. Numbers 1 through 9 are spelled out, and numbers 10 and above are written as numerals. And again, the rules for dates and money are slightly different, so go back to our first lecture on AP Style if you're still kind of confused on the number system. And then, of course, I'm always more than happy to explain it a little bit more in depth via email, via Schoology, because I know sometimes some things in video lectures can get lost in translation. Now, you never want to start a sentence with a numeral except if the sentence starts with a year. For example, 3 basketball players were drafted and 400 incoming freshmen enrolled this year. Now, the 3 baseball players, that follows our rule because again, 3 is between 1 and 9. However, 400 is most certainly not between 1 and 9, but our sentence is starting with a number. Now, ordinal numbers are okay when describing the order and time or location. Spell out 1st through 9th and write 10th and higher as a numeral. Again, ordinal numbers are those 1st, 2nd, 3rd, 4th, 5th, 6th, 7th, 8th, 9th, 10th, 11th, and so on. Now, again, I like these examples as well. She came in 2nd place. Again, it's a number 1st through 9th, 1 through 9, and they sat in the 12th row. And in here, you're allowed to use the TH. Again, when we talked about dates, we don't normally use the TH, but ordinal numbers are a little different. Now, when talking about percentages, we always want to write our numerals with the word percent written afterwards. So we don't want to use the the two little circles and the line in between the circles, we always want to write out the word percent. Kind of like with money, we write out the word cents. Enrollment at West Coast High School increased 3%, and not that little special character with the two circles and the line. And as you can see, again, 3 is a number 1 through 9, but because it's a percentage, we want to write out that numeral. Now, for punctuation, commas and periods always go inside quotation marks. Always, always, always. The witness said, "I saw the accident." And do you see how that period at the very end is inside the quotation mark? And then we see, "I saw the accident," comma, inside a quotation mark, the witness said. The only time that a comma does not go inside a quotation mark is up here in the first example, when you introduce what we call tags, kind of like the game that you played when you were a kid, a tag. The witness said, comma, quotation mark, "I saw the accident." However, if you start the sentence with a quote, then your tag being the witness side and the witness said, if you start your sentence with a quote, "I saw the accident," then you must have that comma inside the quotation marks. Again, a tag is just that bit of a sentence that tells us who said what quote. And so in this case, our tag is the witness. The witness said. Now, in a simple series, do not use a comma before a conjunction. And our example sentence is, "She likes sushi, pizza, and tamales." Now, this particular comma that you might have noticed is missing, we call this the Oxford comma, kind of like Oxford College. And it's that comma that normally goes right before the word "and" in a series. And it's meant to help separate items in a series, items in a list or in a group. Now, in your English classes, you've probably been told to put a comma there. And this is one of the differences between English and journalism. The Oxford comma does not exist in journalism. Again, it's a holdover from the days when newspapers were expensive and pricey to print, and every single character mattered because every single character took up space and cost money. So let me ask you something. If she likes sushi, pizza, and tamales, are you really confused as to whether she means pizza as itself and tamales as itself, or pizza and tamales together in one dish? Not really, because pizza and tamales don't go together. And that's why it's okay to drop the Oxford comma, because the meaning of the sentence doesn't change. Comparatively, if we had a sentence in an English class that said, "She likes sushi, ice cream, and chocolate syrup," well, we have to ask the question, does she like chocolate syrup on her ice cream and chocolate syrup? Or is it just that she likes sushi, comma, ice cream, comma, and chocolate syrup? That's where the Oxford comma would come in handy. But again, that would be for an English class. In a journalism class, we rarely ever use the Oxford comma. And again, it's because it's a holdover from the early days of print journalism. And then, at the very end, when you're finishing writing your sentences, use a single space after a period. There is a trend that some people, when typing, will put 2 spaces after periods, and that is not how we need to type as journalists. It's not as common a practice anymore to put 2 spaces after a period, but you might have some teachers, or when you get older and if college is in the works for you, you might have a college professor that tells you to put 2 spaces after a period when you finish a sentence. But in journalism, we just put the 1 space after the period, just like you would put 1 space between 2 words in a sentence. Now, let's move on and talk about states. If you're writing about a state and not mentioning a city, go ahead and spell it out. When you include the city name and state together, the state needs to be abbreviated. Now, I will attach a document that shows all of the particular state abbreviations. We're about to go over it in the PowerPoint as well, but I want to go ahead and give you a written guide to go with this to let you know how states are abbreviated in journalism, because it's not quite the same abbreviation as it is in a typical state abbreviation, such as when you fill out an envelope for mail. The state abbreviations are a little different, and so we're about to see it here, but I will go ahead and make a Word document as well and attach it to the discussion post so that you have a more physical copy to work with as well. Now, when you include the city name and the state together, again, that state needs to be abbreviated, but there are some states that are not abbreviated, and those are Alaska, Hawaii, Idaho, Iowa, Maine, Ohio, Texas, and Utah. Again, when writing mail to a friend, you would abbreviate all of these states, but you do not in journalism, and this is what those state abbreviations look like. As you can see, most of our state abbreviations are 3 or 4 letters long. The only ones that aren't are Rhode Island, South Carolina, South Dakota, North Carolina, New York, New Mexico, Pennsylvania. Most of our 2-letter states that are abbreviated have 2 words, and so we just initial the first letter of each state. However, for the rest of our states that are merely 1 word, most of our abbreviations are 3 or 4 letters long. But again, I'll attach a Google Docs with this list. It seems that Google Docs works a little bit better on these Chromebooks. But I want you to look at the examples and see how they're differentiated. She came from Anaheim, Calif, right? She came from Anaheim, California. You have to match up, see where California is, see that it is abbreviated, and so because we have a city and a state, we abbreviate the state. The treaty was signed in Honolulu, Hawaii. However, if we go back, Hawaii is in our note that it is not abbreviated. So we always spell out Hawaii, whether it has a city or is just a state. And then finally, the earthquake was in California. Well, but again, we have an abbreviation here, but we don't have one here. Why is that? Well, again, it's because in this last example sentence, we don't have a city to go with it. If you abbreviate a state, you must have the city name with it. If you don't, we always spell it out. Now, we have reached our stopping point for today. We will continue on with our series on AP Style tomorrow. And so, as always, if you have any questions, please feel free to reach out. I will be happy to help clarify anything that we go over in lectures or in our assignments. Anything that causes any kind of confusion or concern, I'm more than happy to sit down and discuss with you, either over email or by phone. And so, once again, we do not have an assignment for tonight, but continue working on your blogs. You guys are doing a great job, and I'm really enjoying reading your blogs. So you all have a good day.